If I had to use just one word, one single powerful adjective to describe James Cameron's Avatar, it wouldn't be beautiful, nor would it be good. It would be insane. Rest assured, I am not exaggerating. The next few minutes will serve as an indictment, proving that this statement is entirely accurate. Avatar is not just a movie. It was a war, a gamble, and a giant leap for human history. Let's dive deep and decode the 7 insane truths behind this masterpiece. The billion-dollar gamble and the war with the studio. First, let's talk about the surface number, $237 million. That was the official production budget in 2009. If we add marketing costs and account for inflation up to the present day, that figure easily surpasses the $500 million mark for a single film project. But this expense wasn't about paying salaries to superstars. Avatar didn't feature Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt at the time. Sam Worthington was then an unknown actor who was literally sleeping in his car. So where did the money go? The answer lies in an obsession with technology. You need to understand the context of the time. 20th Century Fox was terrified. They looked at a script about 3-meter-tall blue people with long tails riding flying beasts, and they thought James Cameron had lost his mind. There were tense meetings where executives demanded Cameron cut the runtime and reduce the visual effects scenes to save money. Do you know what James Cameron did? He pointed straight at the massive headquarters building that Fox had built with the profits from Titanic and said, "You see that building? My Titanic paid for that, so this time shut up and let me work." That is the attitude of a man willing to go all in. To make Avatar, Cameron completely dismantled the traditional filmmaking process, filming post-production. With Avatar, he did everything simultaneously. It was a gamble where, if he lost, his career and Fox itself would have vanished into thin air. 2. 15 years of waiting in the draft in the drawer. The story truly begins in 1994. James Cameron had written an 80-page treatment for Avatar. At that time, the idea of a glowing planet and the Na'vi people was already fully formed in his mind. But after completing Titanic 1997 and becoming the king of the world, Cameron suddenly disappeared from Hollywood. He put the Avatar script at the bottom of a drawer. For 15 long years, the public thought he had retired. What was he waiting for? Money? No, he was already filthy rich. He was waiting for technology. In the 90s, if he had made Avatar, the Na'vi characters would have looked like rubber puppets or crude 3D cartoons. Cameron's principle was frighteningly extreme. If current human technology cannot achieve what I envision, I will wait, or I will invent the new technology myself. In 2002, watching the character Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, Cameron saw the first glimmer of hope. But he still wasn't satisfied. He spent that decade exploring the ocean floor, studying bioluminescent plankton, and accumulating biological knowledge to apply to the forests of Pandora later on. Avatar was not a sudden idea. It was the suppressed ambition of a genius for 1/6 of a lifetime. Linguistics, creating a real civilization. Cameron's perfectionism started with details that the general audience might not even notice. Language. In most sci-fi movies, aliens either speak fluent English or make repetitive, nonsensical sounds. Cameron considered that an insult to the audience's intelligence. He wanted the Na'vi to be real. He hired Dr. Paul Frommer, a linguist from the University of Southern California. Frommer's job wasn't to make up a few cool-sounding words. He had to build a complete linguistic system. The Na'vi language has its own alphabet, complex grammatical structures, verbs conjugated by time, mood, and person, and a rich vocabulary numbering in the thousands. The insanity lies here. Cameron forced the actors to learn this language as if they were learning a real foreign tongue. Zoe Saldana, Osinisha Neytiri, spent months just practicing how to roll her tongue and aspirate correctly to match the intonation of a native Pandoran. If you were to download Na'vi learning materials today, you could genuinely use them to write love letters or argue logically. It wasn't acting, it was cultural creation, or redefining 3D technology, a window into another world. Before Avatar, 3D movies were somewhat cheap. They were usually gimmicks with objects flying into the audience's faces like arrows or rocks to scare them, causing eye strain, dizziness, and suffering from dark, muddy colors. Cameron hated that. He wanted 3D to be a window, where the audience looks through it and sees the infinite depth of another world, not something attacking their eyes. The problem was, 3D cameras at the time weighed hundreds of kilograms and were as big as refrigerators. You couldn't possibly carry them through a jungle or shoot intimate, emotional close-ups. Cameron, along with engineer Vince Pace, invented the fusion camera system. Picture this. Our two eyes are on average 6.4 centimeters apart. This distance creates the convergence that allows our brains to perceive depth. Cameron wanted the camera to have two eyes spaced exactly 6.4 centimeters apart, just like a human. But cinema lenses were too bulky to be placed that close together. The genius solution? He used mirrors. He designed a system using a beam splitter, semi-reflective mirror. One camera was positioned vertically, the other horizontally. The images were merged through the mirror, allowing the optical centers of the two lenses to align perfectly with the human interocular distance. The result was the smoothest, brightest, and most realistic 3D footage in history. The system was light enough to be shoulder-mounted, allowing for creative freedom. 5. Performance capture, capturing the soul. The biggest challenge of Avatar was the virtual characters. Previously, motion capture technology only recorded body movements. But the face, it was usually soulless, stiff, or had to be redrawn by animators, like the method used for King Kong. Cameron declared, "I don't want an animated movie. I want the actor's performance to be preserved 100%. He and his team invented a special helmet made of ultralight carbon fiber. Attached to the helmet was a tiny camera, pointed directly at the actor's face from just a few centimeters away. This camera recorded every microtremor, a furrowed brow, the dilation of nostrils, the twitch of a lip, and most importantly, the movement of the eyeballs. This data was processed by computers and applied directly to the Na'vi character's face. This is called performance capture. Thanks to this, when you see Neytiri cry or Jake Sully rage, that isn't computer trickery. Those are the real tears and real anger of Zoe Saldana and Sam Worthington. The computer is merely digital makeup. The soul inside is a real human being. 6. Simulcom and the virtual director. One of the hardest things for actors in CGI-heavy films is acting to nothing. They stand in an empty room covered in green screens, wearing tight suits covered in reflective dots. And the director says, "Imagine there is a dragon in front of you and a cliff over there." It is very easy for emotions to disconnect and eye lines to be wrong. James Cameron solved this with simulcam technology. This is what made him like a god on set. When Cameron held the camera on set, which was essentially a plastic frame with sensors, looking into the monitor, he did not see the green screen or actors in spandex. Instead, the computer would render the Pandora rainforest and the blue Na'vi bodies onto the screen in real time. He could walk around that empty studio and say, "This tree is too big, move it 2 meters to the left." Or, "The lighting here isn't right, adjust the sun for me." It all happened instantly. He could direct the actors to interact precisely with the virtual environment right there. This was a revolution that completely changed the mindset of filmmaking, blurring the line between live-action filming and animation. 7. Hardware power, melting down supercomputers. Finally, all these crazy ideas would be meaningless without a machine powerful enough to realize them. Cameron pushed the visual effects company Weta Digital, New Zealand, to their breaking point. The Pandora forest isn't just trees, it is a living ecosystem. Every tree, every blade of grass had its own physics calculations. The wind blows and leaves shake, characters walk, and the grass bends. At night, everything bioluminesces. The complexity of the data was unimaginable. Existing software on the market surrendered. Weta Digital had to write new software from scratch, partnering with NVIDIA and Adobe to create tools that had never existed. Listen to these numbers to understand the scale. Weta Digital had to build a server farm covering 900 square meters. They used over 4,000 servers with a total of 35,000 processor cores. The system required a massive water cooling system to prevent it from melting down. Every day, this system processed about 1.4 million tasks. The total storage data amounted to over 17 petabytes, or 17,000 gigabytes. To give you perspective, for some of the most complex scenes, like the final battle, a single frame took up to 90 hours for the computer to render. 1 second of film has 24 frames. Do the math and you'll see the waiting time was practically infinite. If they had used only the single most powerful computer of that time to make Avatar, it would have taken thousands of years to finish the movie. Avatar is not simply an entertainment movie with a Pocahontas in space plot, as many people joke. It is a scientific and technological project, a doctoral thesis on cinema that spanned 15 years, mobilizing the brainpower of linguists, biologists, software engineers, and the world's leading semiconductor corporations. That is why this movie grossed nearly $3 billion dollars and held the box office throne for so long. When you buy a ticket to see Avatar, you aren't just buying 3 hours of entertainment. You are buying a ticket to witness the pinnacle of human intellect and perseverance in conquering the impossible. James Cameron proved sometimes to create magic you need to be a little bit insane. Thank you for listening to this extraordinary behind-the-scenes story. Please share your thoughts on Avatar.